The room was cold and silent, with smooth white walls and blinking blue lights everywhere. In the center stood a glass cage, tall and clean, but lifeless. Inside it sat a woman, or what looked like one. Her skin shimmered like polished silver, her eyes pale and glowing. She didn't move much, just stared forward as if time had stopped. Her name was Lyra. She used to be part of the noble class on her planet, respected and admired, but now she was called L7, a test subject, nothing more. Her crime? She could not bear children. To her people, that meant she was useless, cursed, and dangerous. So they locked her away, inside this glass cell, where no one touched her, talked to her, or even looked her in the eye. Every day, scientists passed by, checking her vitals through screens, never speaking a word. Even the guards ignored her, as if she was just air. Lyra had stopped speaking months ago. Her voice, once proud and clear, had faded like dust. She often wondered if she even existed anymore, or if she was just a ghost trapped in glass. But that night, something changed. A human technician entered the lab, wearing a dark blue uniform and carrying a repair toolkit. His name tag read, Jason. He was here to fix a broken power circuit near her containment unit. He didn't even know someone lived in that room. As he bent down to work, he noticed movement from the corner of his eye. He turned and froze. There, behind the clear wall, was Lyra, sitting, staring directly at him, their eyes locked. Jason felt a strange wave go through his chest, something heavy, yet gentle. Not fear, not curiosity, something else. She didn't speak, didn't move, but her eyes said everything. They were sad, yes, but also filled with something deeper. Pain that had no voice. Jason blinked, unsure what to do. He had seen many alien species before, but never one like her. He gave a small nod, almost out of respect. To his surprise, her fingers twitched, like she wanted to return the greeting, but forgot how. Jason finished his work and walked out, but something about her stayed in his mind. The next evening, he came again, not to fix anything, but to check. Was she still there? Yes, she sat in the same place, but this time, her head turned slowly when he entered. Jason hesitated, then took a step closer to the glass. She didn't flinch. He knelt down and placed his hand gently against the glass. On her side, she lifted her palm, almost mirroring him, but she stopped just short, her fingers hovering inches away, afraid, uncertain. The glass between them felt like more than just a wall. It was her prison, not made of steel, but made of silence, shame, and judgment. Later that night, Jason returned with something small, a child's drawing left in his bag by mistake, probably his niece's. It showed a family holding hands under a bright sun. He taped it to the glass and stepped back. Lyra stared at it, eyes wide. She reached up and touched the image softly, her fingertips trembling. Then, for the first time in a long while, she whispered, "Is that love?" Jason didn't speak. He didn't need to. The way he looked at her was answer enough. From that moment, something new grew inside the glass cage. Not escape, not rebellion, but a quiet spark. Hope. No one else noticed. To the others, she was still L7, still cursed, still locked away. But to Jason, she was Lyra, not broken, not useless, just forgotten. And Jason was ready to remember her, even if the rest of the galaxy wanted her erased. He had seen her now, and he couldn't unsee what lived behind that glass. Not a monster, not a prisoner, but a soul waiting for someone to believe she mattered. The next morning, the drawing was gone. Jason stood in front of the glass cage, staring at the empty spot where he had taped I.T. His heart sank. Had someone removed it? Had they seen him? He looked at Lyra, but she didn't move. She sat still, like before, her face cold and distant again. Jason wanted to speak, but the rules were clear. No communication with the failed subject, the manual had said. She wasn't considered a person here, only data. As he turned to leave, a quiet voice reached his ears. "Thank you." Jason froze. Lyra's lips had barely moved, her voice soft like wind slipping through cracks, but she had spoken, and she had spoken to him. He turned slowly, unsure if he imagined it. Lyra's eyes were lowered now, hiding whatever emotion lived inside. Jason nodded once, a small gesture, then left before anyone saw. Later that day, the head warden called him in. "Technician Jason," the alien said, his voice sharp like broken glass. "We noticed unusual time logs near Subject L7's cell." Jason forced a straight face. "Just fixing power surges, sir." The warden stared at him, his red eyes unblinking. "She is not to be seen as alive, technician," he growled. "She failed her purpose. She is a shame to her kind." Jason clenched his jaw. He wanted to scream, to tell them she was suffering, not broken, but he only said, "Understood," and walked away. That night, Jason returned again, but this time he brought something small and simple. A music player, old and scratched, playing soft earth melodies. He placed it near the glass, letting the sound float gently into the space. Lyra lifted her head. Slowly, her silver eyes flickered, unsure. The notes reached her like a memory from a life she never had. "Is this from your world?" she asked softly. Jason smiled. "Yes." Lyra listened for a long time, her hand pressed lightly to the glass. From that night onward, he returned every evening. Sometimes he brought stories, told in whispers, sometimes just music, or simple earth snacks he left near the sensors so she could smell them. Little by little, Lyra changed. Her posture softened, her eyes looked brighter. She began to exist again, not just survive, but nothing Stor. Its secret forever. One morning, Jason found a small paper taped on his locker. "You are being watched." His heart pounded. He had gone too far, but it was already too late to stop. He couldn't uncare. He couldn't look away. That evening, Lyra didn't speak. She just sat still, her hands curled into fists. Jason touched the glass. "What happened?" She whispered. "They told me I will be transferred." Jason's chest went cold. He knew what transferred meant. It was a quiet way of saying, disposed. "No," he said. "I won't let that happen." Lyra looked up, her face pale. "Why?" "I have no children, no role, no purpose," she said. Jason stepped closer, pressing his hand harder to the glass. "Because purpose isn't what others give you," he said. "It's what you choose." Lyra stared at him like he had spoken magic, like she wanted to believe him, but didn't dare. She whispered, "I'm not used to kindness," Jason replied. "Then let's start small." He smiled. "Today, I brought something." From his bag, he pulled out a tiny potted plant. It had 2 green leaves and a small yellow flower. "From Earth," he said. "It grows, even in darkness." He placed it on a shelf near her cage. Lyra leaned in, eyes wide. "It's alive," she breathed. "Yes," Jason said, "just like you." She stared at the flower and then at him, and for the first time, she smiled. That smile broke something inside him, not in a painful way, but in the way a frozen river breaks when spring finally arrives. Jason walked out that night knowing he couldn't keep doing this in secret. He would have to make a choice, follow orders or follow his heart. And far behind him, in the glass cage, Lyra whispered to the tiny flower, "Grow." The next day, the music player was gone. So was the small potted flower. And this time, so were Lyra's calm eyes. She sat in the corner of the glass cage, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her silver skin looked dimmer, her glow fading again. Jason stared through the glass, heart pounding. "What happened?" he mouthed. Lyra didn't answer. Her lips trembled like she had cried but had no more tears left. Before he could reach for the intercom, a voice echoed behind him. "Step away from the cell, technician." Jason turned quickly. It was Supervisor Eltrin, one of the senior alien wardens. Tall, cold, and sharp-faced, Eltrin walked with quiet menace. He stared at Jason with suspicion. "You've grown attached," Eltrin said flatly. Jason stood straight. "I follow repair schedules only." Eltrin didn't blink. "You see her as a person, don't you?" Jason stayed silent. The silence was answer enough. Eltrin leaned close. voice low. She is not a person. She is a failure. No children, no legacy, no honor. In our culture, that is death. Jason's hands curled into fists. Then your culture is broken, he said quietly. Eltrin narrowed his eyes. Watch your tongue, human. He handed Jason a new file folder. Effective tomorrow. The subject will be transported to Zone C for reclassification. Jason felt sick. Zone C was where living things were unmade. Lyra had days, maybe less. Eltrin walked away, boots clicking coldly against the floor. Jason looked back at Lyra. She had heard every word. Her face was calm, too calm, like someone who had already said goodbye to the world. That night, Jason couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark corner of his bunk room, staring at the flower pot he had hidden away when he saw the surveillance cam. The tiny yellow flower still stood tall, unaware of the cruelty around it. He tapped into the base's systems, searching quietly for logs and files. Lyra had once been a respected diplomat on her homeworld, decorated, intelligent, strong. Then came the test results. She couldn't produce offspring. One by one, she lost her titles, her friends, her husband. Jason stared at the screen, his fists shaking. She was abandoned for something she couldn't control, he whispered. They broke her, then blamed her for breaking. He contacted an old friend, May, another human technician working in a neighboring dome. She'll be destroyed, Jason told her, voice shaking. She's not dangerous, just different. May hesitated, then replied, There's a hidden shuttle route through the storage corridor. You have one chance, but you'll need a signal override. Jason nodded. I'll get her out. Back at the lab, Jason visited Lyra again, but this time, a guard followed behind him. He pretended to check the wiring, but he kept his voice low. Lyra, he said softly, listen. You're not going to Zone C. Her head turned slightly. Jason continued. I'm getting you out. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. Jason placed a small scanner chip near the glass, coated with her ID. Midnight, 2 days from now, he whispered. Be ready. As he walked away, Lyra pressed her hand to the glass. Just once. No words, no tears, just quiet understanding. But someone else had noticed. Later that night, Jason found another warning note. This one with a single word. Traitor. His heart raced. Someone was watching, and this time, they were angry. But he didn't care. He had made his decision. He went to the observation deck, where the stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass ceiling. Jason stood in silence, thinking about Lyra's silver eyes and trembling voice, about a woman thrown away because she couldn't give birth, yet still had more warmth than the whole cold system around her. Suddenly, footsteps approached. It was Dr. Kelna, one of the older alien researchers. She was usually silent, but tonight, her expression was different. I saw what you did, she said. Jason stiffened, ready to lie or fight, but then she added, Good. Jason blinked. Kelna sighed. Not all of us agree with the punishment. She was my student once, long ago. She taught peace, and we repaid her with silence. Jas stared, shocked. Kelna reached into her pocket and handed him a magnetic override key. You'll need this for the back gate, she said. Go before they shut everything down. Jason clutched the key. He was no longer alone, and far across the station, inside her cold glass cell, Lyra sat with her back straight. The spark in her eyes had returned. This time, not for music or flowers, but for the first whisper of freedom. Midnight was coming closer, and so was the danger. Jason sat alone in the service tunnels beneath the main research lab. His hands trembled slightly as he tested the override key again. It clicked once, then again. Perfect fit. He exhaled slowly, the weight of his decision pressing on his chest like a mountain. There was no turning back now. If he got caught, it meant prison. Maybe worse. If Lyra got caught, she'd disappear forever. The plan had to be perfect. He only had one shot. He stared at the map projected on his tablet. 3 checkpoints, 2 locked gates, 1 final access hatch into the docking bay. He tapped into the security feed, watching Lyra's cage. She sat on the floor, hands on her lap, glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked calm, but he knew better. She was ready. She was waiting. He messaged May, his friend, the one who had helped locate the shuttle tunnel. Her reply came quickly. Diversion set, 12:05 a.m., 10 minutes window. Be fast. Jason smiled. He wasn't alone anymore, and neither was Lyra. Meanwhile, Lyra sat in silence, but her mind raced. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears. For so long she had been still, forgotten, unseen. Now every second felt alive, like her soul had been lit on fire. She touched the small metal disc Jason had slipped to her last time, the encoded chip. It would deactivate her glass cell's energy field. One swipe, and the cage would open. It felt unreal. Could she really step out? Could she run again? Was she even strong enough to survive freedom? Her hand shook slightly, but she tightened her grip. If Jason believed in her, then she had to believe in herself. No more shame, no more silence. 12:04 a.m. Jason crouched behind the maintenance gate, heart pounding like thunder. He checked the motion sensor. 2 guards on rotation, one already turning away. May's timed diversion went off exactly as planned. An alarm blared in the north wing, red lights flashing through the corridors. Guards scrambled toward the sound, radios shouting orders. Jason ran, fast and silent. He used the override key. Click. The gate opened. He moved like a shadow through the tunnel, heading straight for her glass cell. Inside, Lyra heard the faint sirens. She stood slowly, hands shaking. The time had come. Jason arrived, breathing hard. Lyra, he whispered, tapping the glass. She turned and faced him, her silver eyes wide but steady. He nodded once. She took the disc and swiped it near the energy panel. A spark, a hum, then silence. The door slid open with a soft hiss. The glass cage was no more. For a second, she didn't move. Then, slowly, her foot crossed the threshold. One step into a world that had forgotten her. One step toward it anyway. Jason reached out his hand. She stared at it, then slowly took it. Their hands locked. Not as prisoner and rescuer, but as equals. They moved fast, weaving through the hidden corridors Jason had memorized. Twice they had to freeze as patrols passed. Once, a scanner beam nearly caught them, but Jason disabled it with May's code. At last, they reached the final hatch. Beyond it was the landing deck and a small, unmarked transport shuttle, their escape ship, but the door didn't open. Jason tried the code again. No response. It's been blocked, he whispered, panic rising. Suddenly, a quiet voice echoed from behind. You're not going without her. It was Dr. Kelna. She stepped forward and slid her personal ID card into the panel. The door unlocked. Jason stared at her in shock. Why are you helping us? Kelna looked at Lyra with deep sadness in her eyes. She once saved my family during a civil war, she said. She believed in peace when no one else did. This is my way of returning the debt. Lyra stepped forward, touched Kelna. Hand softly. For a moment, no words were needed. Only gratitude. Jason guided Lyra inside the shuttle, securing the door behind them. The engines hummed to life, systems blinking green. Everything was ready. As they prepared for launch, a red light flashed. A warning. Someone had triggered a base lockdown. Jason looked at Lyra. Her face was calm, but her eyes were firm. We go, she said, her voice clear. He hit the thrusters. The shuttle roared forward, pushing past the first gate before it shut. A loud crash echoed behind them, but they were already in the air, already escaping. Below, chaos erupted. Guards yelled, gates slammed shut, alarms screamed, but it was too late. The woman they had locked in a glass cage was gone, and the man who believed in her had just made her free. The shuttle broke through the clouds like a stone through still water. For the first time in years, Lyra saw the stars, not through glass, not from a prison, but with her own eyes. The sky wasn't cold anymore. It was wide, deep, full of colors. She stood behind Jason in the cockpit, holding onto a rail for balance. Her knees were weak, not from fear, but from disbelief. She had escaped. She was flying. She was free. Jason glanced back at her. Doing okay? Lyra didn't answer at first. Her gaze locked on the stars. Then she whispered, I never thought the sky would look this broken. Jason raised an eyebrow. Broken? She nodded slowly. Because I was told I didn't belong in it. Jason said nothing. Instead, he just reached back and gently touched her hand. That simple gesture said everything. The shuttle entered hyperspace moments later, a soft hum surrounding them. Jason had set course for a neutral colony, a small human outpost on a farming moon called Mira's Rest. No military, no scanners, no judgment. Just land, quiet, and people who asked no questions. Lyra sat down in the co-pilot seat and stared at her reflection in the console. I don't know how to be anything, she said quietly. Jason looked at her. You don't need to be anything, he replied. Just be you. She looked confused. All my life I was told my value was in what I could give. Children, legacy, power. But I have none of that. Jason leaned forward, resting his elbows on the controls. You gave me something already, he said. Lyra looked up, surprised. You made me care again. Silence filled the space between them, but it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. It was safe. Hours passed before they landed. The colony looked nothing like the tall towers or silver halls of the alien capital. There were green fields, metal cottages, dusty paths, and wind turbines spinning gently in the breeze. It felt alive. As they stepped out of the shuttle, warm sunlight hit Lyra's face. She flinched. Sunlight had never touched her skin without glass between. Jason smiled. Welcome to freedom. Children ran in the distance, their laughter like soft music in the wind. Lyra stared, eyes wide. One of the children stopped and waved at her, smiling with chocolate on her face. No fear, no hate, no questions, just kindness. They were taken in by a woman named Amara, the local medical chief. She gave Lyra a room, fresh clothes, and a quiet place to sit. Stay as long as you want, she said kindly. We don't ask where people come from, just where they want to go. That night, Lyra sat outside under the stars again, barefoot on the soft earth. Jason sat beside her with 2 cups of warm drink, handing her one. Why are you still helping me? She asked softly. Jason looked at the sky, then back at her. Because I see you, he said. And I think you're worth saving. She looked at him with eyes that shimmered, not from glow, but from something warm and wet. I don't know what I am anymore, she admitted. Jason leaned in slightly. You're someone who deserves to heal. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A little girl from the colony, maybe 5 years old, ran up to Lyra holding a crumpled flower. For you, the girl said with a bright smile. Lyra froze, staring at the small hand holding the gift. She slowly bent down, took the flower, and whispered, Thank you. The girl hugged her legs without warning, giggled, and ran off. Lyra stood there, shaking, not from fear, but from a new feeling. Something small and gentle had bloomed in her chest. She had no words for it, but it felt like beginning again. Jason watched from afar, and for the first time, he saw color returning to her cheeks, but the peace would not last. That evening, a silent ship entered the system. No beacon, no ID signal. A stealth model, one used by retrieval squads. Jason noticed it first on the comm screen. He cursed under his breath. They found us. He rushed outside where Lyra was helping Amara plant herbs. We need to go, he said urgently. Lyra's eyes widened. Already? He nodded. They're coming and they won't knock. But this time, she didn't look afraid. She stood up straight, her silver skin glowing softly in the fading light. If they come for me, she said calmly, they'll see I'm not caged anymore. Jason stared at her. Not as someone fragile, but as someone becoming whole. The sky above them cracked with thunder, but Lyra stood tall. This time, not behind glass. This time, ready to fight for her own life. The quiet village of Mira's Rest had never seen warships, but that morning, the sky was not quiet anymore. A black dot appeared far above the horizon, slow, steady, cold. Jason stared at the incoming ship from the roof of the supply hall, his jaw tight. He knew that design, sharp like a blade, silent like a hunter, a retrieval craft, sent not to ask, but to take. Inside the cottage, Lyra sat by the window, a child's toy in her hands. It was a wooden carving, a simple bird with round eyes and wings that didn't move, a gift from one of the local children. She had been holding it for hours, tracing its edges, trying to understand why it made her feel so strange inside. The door opened and Jason stepped in. "They're here," he said gently. Lyra turned slowly, her face calm. "I thought I would be afraid," she said, "but I'm not." Jason tilted his head. "Why not?" She stood, holding the little bird. "Because I finally have something worth standing for." Outside, the townspeople gathered, unsure but not panicked. They had seen Lyra smile, laugh, even help build fences. She was no monster, no outcast. Not here, just another soul trying to belong. Jason stood before the group, hands raised. "This is a peaceful colony," he called out. "We don't want to fight." The warship landed anyway, dust and heat blasting across the field. 3 tall alien guards stepped out, their faces hidden under dark helmets. Behind them stood Eltrin, the same cold warden who once called Lyra a failure. His voice echoed, cruel and sharp. "The subject must be returned." Jason stepped forward. "She's not a subject. Her name is Lyra." Eltrin ignored him, his eyes locked on the silver-skinned woman walking forward slowly. Lyra did not hide. She stood in front of the entire colony, the child's wooden bird still in her hand. She looked directly at Eltrin, her voice firm but gentle. "I'm not going with you." Gasps rose from the crowd, but Jason just smiled, proud. Eltrin scoffed. "You don't have a choice," he said. "You are childless, purposeless. You belong to no one." Lyra lifted the wooden bird in her hand. "I belong to myself," she replied, "and to the people who see me as more than a womb. I helped a child plant her first flower yesterday. She asked me if I could be her aunt. I said yes," Eltrin growled. "This is not your world." Lyra looked around at the villagers, the children, the open fields. "No," she said. "This is my home." Amara Steppes, and beside her, folding her arms. "We don't send people away for not being useful," she said. "We welcome anyone willing to live with peace." Jason stepped beside Lyra, hand resting near his tool belt, where a shock baton was hidden. "If you want to take her," he said, "you'll have to go through me." One of the alien guards moved forward, but Eltrin raised a hand. He studied the scene, dozens of human villagers, some armed, all united. He saw Lyra not as a prisoner anymore, but as someone who belonged. For the first time, doubt crossed his face. "You're making a mistake," he warned. Jason stepped closer. "No," he said, "you did, when you let go of someone who only wanted to be loved." Lyra took a deep breath. "I may never have children," she said, "but I have given care, protection, and hope. Tell me which one matters more." There was silence. Even the wind paused. Then Eltrin turned sharply and walked back to the ship. No threats, no words. He had lost, not by force, but by something he didn't understand, something stronger than judgment, acceptance. The warship lifted into the sky and vanished like a ghost. No one cheered, but hearts beat faster, lighter. Lyra stood still, the sun warming her face. Later that evening, Jason found her sitting under the large tree behind the cottage. She was carving the little wooden bird again, this time with feathers, a soft smile on its face. "I thought I'd be hunted forever," she said quietly. Jason sat beside her. "You were never meant to be hunted," he said. "You were meant to fly." She looked up. "Do you think I can learn how?" Jason grinned. "I think you already did." That night, the village held a small feast. They didn't call it a celebration, but in every laugh, every shared plate, every child climbing into Lyra's lap, there was joy. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a part of something, not because she gave life, but because she gave love. The sun rose gently over Mira's Rest, painting the skies with soft orange and gold. The winds carried the scent of blooming fields and warm bread. The small colony moved slowly, peacefully, like it always did. But for Lyra, today felt different. She stood in front of a mirror, wearing a light robe made by the village tailors. It was simple, earthy brown with green stitching, but to her, it felt like royal armor, not because it was fancy, but because it had been made for her. She looked at her reflection, touching her silver skin with quiet fingers, no longer hiding it, no longer ashamed of it. For the first time in her life, she looked at herself and saw more than failure. She saw belonging. Outside, Jason waited with 2 children beside him. The same little girl who had once given Lyra a flower now clung to Jason's hand. "She's coming, right?" the child asked with big hopeful eyes. Jason smiled. "She said she wouldn't miss it." Moments later, Lyra stepped out into the daylight. The children gasped, eyes wide with joy. "You look like a princess," the girl shouted. Lyra chuckled softly, her voice no longer shaky. "Then you must be my tiny royal guard." They walked together toward the center of the colony, where a small gathering had formed. It wasn't a ceremony, not officially, but the air felt like one, like something sacred was happening. Amara stood near the garden, holding a data pad. She smiled at Lyra and Jason as they arrived. "We wanted to ask you both something," Amara said gently. Jason looked surprised. "Us?" Amara nodded, then turned to the group. "Lyra has given us something we forgot we needed," she said. "Kindness, calm, and care, not just to children, but to all of us. We'd like to make it official." She turned the pad toward Lyra. It showed a colony registration form. One line stood out in bright green. Family status, chosen guardian of community. Lyra stared at the screen, breath caught in her chest. A title, yes, but not one forced on her, not one tied to reproduction or legacy. This one was earned, given, offered. Her hand trembled as she reached out and pressed her finger to the pad. The green light flashed, and soft applause filled the air. Then Jason stepped forward, his face serious. "There's something else," he said. He pulled out a small carved pendant, shaped like the same wooden bird the child had once given Lyra. He had added small wings, stretched wide as if flying. He handed it to her. "I made this," he said, "because you remind me of it. Small, gentle, but strong enough to break the sky." Lyra held the pendant in her palm, tears welling in her eyes. She whispered, "Why are you always giving me things I don't know how to accept?" Jason smiled. "Because no one ever taught you how to receive love. Until now." There was silence again. Then Lyra did something no one expected. She stepped closer to Jason, placed the pendant around her neck, and whispered, "Then let me give something back." She turned to the crowd, her voice calm but steady. "I may not bear children," she said, "but I now understand that family is not made by blood alone. It is made by trust, time, and care. And if you will have me, I will spend the rest of my life protecting this place and its people." The children clapped first, then the adults, then everyone. It wasn't loud, but it was real. Later, the villagers danced under the evening stars. Simple music, laughter, and shared food filled the air. Lyra sat beside Jason, watching the children spin in circles. The little girl returned and crawled into her lap, yawning. "Are you really my aunt now?" the child asked sleepily. Lyra smiled and kissed her forehead. "If you'll have me," she whispered. The child nodded and fell asleep in her arms. Jason looked at them and whispered, "You're already more family than most people ever know." Lyra looked up at the stars, not as something far, cold, and unreachable, but as a sky she could now call hers, not because she had escaped, not because she had been rescued, but because someone saw her worth and let her become, no longer caged, no longer judged. Lyra had found something stronger than freedom. She had found a family.